This is the GFX100 the second. First, let's talk about its amazing sensor. This is a 102 megapixel BSI CMOS sensor medium format with a base ISO of 80. It is based with the amazing 5th generation processor from Fujifilm, which unlocks tons of capabilities for the new medium format camera. In terms of weight and size, the camera comes at 948 grams without the viewfinder and at about 1030 grams with it. And that's about 300 grams later compared to the previous generation, the GFX100. In terms of build quality, well, we have a really well-built camera that feels great in hand. The rubber finish with its motifs on the body looks amazing. The matte color of the camera feels very modern, and it feels like it is workhorse. It feels like it is built like a brick, solid in hand, while having a really interesting design. The EVF is detachable from the body, so you can detach it or reattach it very easily. And the hand grip itself is also coming separately. So this makes for a very compact and portable kind of design while being a medium format camera. Now, if we dive more into details into the EVF, it's a 9.44 million dot EVF. And when you look into this EVF, well, it just looks amazing. It is crystal clear, crisp, and very comfortable to use. Now, if you choose to remove the EVF and solely rely on the back screen, well, you will also feel at ease because the back screen is very comfortable, very solid, and you can tell that it is built to last. In terms of ergonomics, well, you have a movie and a still switch, PASM dials, as well as 6 custom modes that you can configure based on your needs. On the right side of the camera, you will have a front dial, as well as a shutter button with the power on and off button. And you have 3 configurable buttons that are easily visible on the top screen. Speaking of the top screen right here, this is a very useful and bright screen that can be configured either black or white for the comforts of its users. You also have 2 custom buttons on the front of the camera, as well as a traditional Fujifilm button layout on the back of it. Overall, this camera feels great in hand, is easy to use, and makes it very easy to work with. In terms of connectivity, you have tons of options here. First, if we look at the data, well, you have 1 SD card port as well as 1 CF Express Type B. You also have access to an Ethernet port, an HDMI port, a microphone 3.5mm jack, as well as a USB-C port that can either serve as power source, but also directly output to an SSD. In terms of battery life, well, the GFX system uses the same battery as the X system, the latest generation battery. On the X series, this battery performs amazing. I would say, however, that I would have preferred a slightly bigger battery for the GFX camera because it gets drained a little bit faster. Now let's talk about image quality of this camera. For photography, you have 16-bit colors. That is definitely tons of colors compared to the usual 10 or 12-bit that you have on other cameras. The large sensor allows you to have very smooth transition between your in focus and out of focus area, which is very characteristic of the medium format. We have been able to test this camera with 3 sets of lenses, the AT110 as well as the 32 to 64mm f4. And overall, the sharpness, the beauty of the color, the contrast as well as the rendering of the images is beautiful. One thing I would add though is that if you go into the high ISO range with this camera, sometimes we have experienced some noise here and there, so you might want to be aware of that if that is how you want to use this camera. But usually this camera is used in a studio environment or in conditions where you can control the light, so that should not be an issue. This camera is able to shoot raw 100 megapixel files, 8 frames per second for 10 seconds continuously. And for a medium format camera, that is quite an achievement. We've also tested it for sports, and while it is not the best camera out there for sports, it definitely can do the job. And this amazing burst rate for medium format camera also comes with autofocus capabilities that have been greatly improved compared to the previous generation. You now have access to subject tracking with humans, birds, train, cars, planes, as well as animals. In our test, we can see that the tracking works really well. However, in the field, with the lenses that we use, well, those are heavy lenses with very heavy glass, So the autofocus capabilities and performance is definitely not 100%, but it's already amazing that with a medium format camera, we are able to shoot burst rate and hit pretty much like 50 to 60% of our shots. So this is definitely a great improvement when it comes to the medium format world. Speaking of video, this camera packs tons of features for it. First, you have new tools that are much welcome for the Fujifilm system, vector scope as well as waveforms. It's easy for you to add them to your back screen as well as move them around for the particular layout that you would prefer. And it's a much welcome addition for filmmakers who wants to use this camera for their particular production. The GFX100 II is also able to capture 8K up to 30 frames per second, as well as 4K 60, and it is also able to use anamorphic mode, which will basically display the de-squeeze image at the back of your camera directly. Now, if we look at the different video quality and aspect ratio, well, they come with definitely crop factors because this sensor is huge. If you're trying to shoot 4K or 8K with this camera, you might definitely want to pay attention to rolling shutter because that can be an issue, especially in 8K. However, overall, the image quality that you get with it is just crisp and beautiful to look at. Now, this Fujifilm camera comes with a new film simulation, Reala Ace. And this film simulation feels like if Classic Chrome and Provia had a baby together. You have colors that are a bit less saturated than the Provia one and a higher contrast than the Provia film simulation. We've taken quite a lot of shots with it, and overall it is a very pleasing film simulation to use, so if you can use it on this camera, I definitely recommend it. Okay, so the GFX100 II comes at $7,500. Now, this is a medium format camera at this price point, which is extremely competitive. Fujifilm is trying to reduce the price point of the medium format. Overall, after testing this camera for a week, what I would say is that this camera felt completely different from the full frame or the APS-C system. The difference of image quality, depth of field, and overall transition in the focus plane that you get between an APS-C and a full frame is much less noticeable compared to what you get from a full frame to that particular medium format. And with the autofocus capabilities, with the burst rate, with all the video's capabilities that Fujifilm packed in this camera at this particular price point, I would say that definitely the GFX100 II is one of the best camera that I've tried and one of the camera that got me the most excited in the recent times. It is kind of a medium format camera that don't remind you that it is a medium format. You just point and shoot, enjoy it, and then you look at the images and you're like, oh wow, this is actually a medium format. So who is it for? Well, definitely for professionals that know that they need it. I don't think that any beginner will start here, but if you have the chance to try it, to rent it, to see how it feels, then I would definitely recommend to give it a try because it definitely feels great. Thank you for watching PRONEWS. If you've missed it, check out our video right here where we review the Sony a6700, and we'll see you in the next video.